Hey, what's up everyone? I hope you all are doing well. This is Jack from byprogrammers.com and welcome back to a brand new episode of Let's Code React Native. In this episode, we are going to build a beautiful food recipe app based on the design created by Herdetya on Dribbble.com. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. If not, please forgive me, alright? And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification for more videos like this. Alright, now with that being said, let's get started. Alright, so for this project, let me open this up. Okay, so we are going to build three different screens, which are the login screen, the home screen over here, and lastly followed by the recipe screen. And for the recipe screen over here, we are going to implement the scrollable header animation. What it means is that whenever we scroll up and down in the screen, the header section over here should be able to animate accordingly. Don't worry about that for now, as we will work on that later on, okay? So just like the previous episode, instead of creating the project from scratch, we have actually prepared a star template so that it will be a lot easier for you guys to follow along. So head over to the starter repo. I have included the link in the description below. Go ahead and download the source code and you should be able to get this. And once you got the source code, open up the terminal and run npm install. Next, we need to run React Native link. And lastly, we need to cd into iOS and run pod install. Alright, now we can then go back to the root folder and run npx react native run iOS. Okay, so as you can see here, we have a very basic star template. We have a plain login screen that allows us to navigate to the home screen. And in the home screen, we have the bottom tab navigator over here, and also a button that allows us to navigate to the recipe screen like that. Okay? Now regarding the star template, it's pretty much the same as the one we have for the previous episodes, which includes the assets folder, the constants folder, the navigation folder, and lastly is the screens folder. Now I'm not going to go through the star template in details anymore, because we have been doing that for the past 14 episodes. But don't worry, if there's anything that you don't understand, please feel free to leave a comment below and we will try our best to assist you, alright? Okay, so that's enough for the introduction. The first thing we are going to do here is the login screen, okay? So go back to the source code in the screens folder, open up the login.js file. Now let me hide the terminal. And I would like to get rid of all this, we don't need them. This one as well. And now I'm going to import a few more things from the React Native. So we need image background and also we need the status bar. After that, we need to import a couple of things from constants, like that. So here we need images, we need colors, we need sizes, and also we need fonts. So for the login screen, we can mainly divide it into two different parts, which are the header part or the header section over here, and also the details section over here. So within the container view, we can split it into two different sections, which are the header section and also the details section, like that. And for the container view, I would like to give it some styling. Flag should be equals to 1 and the background color should be equals to colors.black. Save it. Let me refresh the app. And over here, I would like to customize the status bar so that it's in white color. Alright, so status bar, bar style equals to light content. Like that, save it. Okay, cool. Now for the header section, if you pay attention to this part over here, there is actually a slight gradient color. And in order to achieve something like this, we are going to need a library called React Native Linear Gradient. So scroll down and I'm gonna just copy this. You can use yarn if you want to. I'm gonna use npm install, go back to the source code, open up the terminal and paste it over here. As usual, I would like to run React Native link. And also we need to cd into iOS and run pod install. Alright, now I would like to close the app like that and cd back to the root folder and run npx react native run iOS. Alright, so now we can then import the React Native linear gradient, and we would like to import linear gradient like that. And for the header section, which is this section over here, we are going to create a new function and render it over here. Okay, so we will render a new function called render header, and we will create this function over here. So function render header, and we will return a container view with a bit of styling. For the height, if the sizes.height is more than 700, then it will be 65%. If it's not, then it will be 60%. Alright, and after this, we will render the image background like that, where the source equals to images.login background, and the style equals to flex will be 1, justify content will be flex n, and the resize mode is going to be covered. Save it. Alright, so we have the background image in place. Next, we are going to render the gradient color over here. Okay, so to do that, within the image background component, we will render the linear gradient component like that. We need to supply some of the props. So start will be x will be 0 and y will be 0. For the end prop, x will be 0 and y will be 1. And for the colors, it's going to be an array of colors.transparent and also colors.black. And for the style, the height will be 200, justify content is going to be flex n, and padding horizontal is going to be sizes.padding. Save it. Alright, as you can see here, we have successfully rendered the gradient color, and all we need to do now is to render the text component over here. Okay, so within the linear gradient component, we will render the text component like this, and here it's going to be cooking a delicious food easily. Give it some styling. Width equals to 80%, color equals to white, and the fonts equals to large title. Save it. Okay, let me try to override the line height like this to 45. Save it. Okay, much better. And just like that, we have completed the header section. Next, we'll move on to the detail section over here. So go back to the source code, and over here, we are going to render a new function called render detail. Like that. And we are going to create this function over here. So function render detail, return something like that. So for the render detail function, the first thing we need is a container view like that. Give it some styling. Flex equals to 1 and padding horizontal equals to sizes.padding. And within the detail section, we are going to render the description and followed by the buttons. Alright, so over here we are going to render description and followed by buttons. Okay, so for the description, we are going to render the text component, and the description will be discover more than 1,200 food recipes in your hands and cooking it easily. Give it some styling. The margin top should be equals to sizes.radius, width equals to 70%, color equals to colors.gray, and the font should be body tree. Save it. Alright, so that's all for the description. Next, we'll move on to the buttons. And for these two buttons, I am going to create a standalone component. Right, so go back to the source code. In the root folder, we are going to create a new folder called components. And within this folder, we are going to create a new file called custom button.js. And over here, same thing, we need to import from React, we need to import from React Native, and here we need touchable opacity and also text. After that, we need to import from React Native linear gradient so that we can achieve this effect over here. Okay, so here, same thing, we need linear gradient. And lastly, we need to import from constants. We need the colors and fonts. Alright, now we can then create the custom button functional component. So constant custom button, and for this component, we need a few props, which are the button text, button container style. Oops, the bracket should be on the outer layer like this. After that, we need colors and also press, arrow function, and don't forget we need to export default custom button. There are basically two different types of buttons over here, the one with a gradient background color and also the one without any background color at all. Okay, so over here, if the colors.length is more than 0, which means if we supply the background color, then we are going to render this part over here, and if it's not, then we will render something else, right? So for now, I'm just gonna render a touchable opacity like that. The onPress equals to onPress, and within the touchable opacity, we are going to render a text component, and here it's going to be button text. Give it some styling. So text align equals to center, color equals to white, and the fonts equals to H2. And I'm going to return the same thing over here as well, just to see if it works. And for the color, I'm gonna change this to light green. Alright, save it. And within the components folder, we need to create a new file called index.js file. And over here, we need to import from the custom button. We need to import the custom button like this. And we need to export it over here so that we can use it. Alright, save it. And now head back to the login.js file. Over here, we need to import from components, and we need to import custom button like this. Alright, now in the buttons section over here, we are going to first render a container view like this. Give it some styling. Flex equals to 1 and justify content equals to center. And now within this container view, we are going to render two buttons, which are the login button and also the sign up button. So over here we have the login button and followed by the sign up button like that. So here we will render the custom button component. The button text should be equals to login, and the colors should be an array of colors.green and followed by colors.line. And whenever I click on this button, it should navigate to the home screen. And you know what? For a better user experience, we should be using replace instead. It basically does the same thing, which is basically to navigate to the home screen. The difference is that replace doesn't allow you to navigate back to the login screen after you have navigated to the home screen. Okay, alright, I'm gonna copy this and render it over here as well. The button text is going to be sign up. For the colors, it's going to be an empty array like this. And whenever I click on the sign up button, it will navigate to the home screen as well. Alright, save it. Let me change to a more obvious color. Alright, cool. So we have successfully rendered the custom button component in the details section over here. All we need to do now is to make some changes on the buttons so that it looks something like this. Alright, so if the colors.length is more than 0, which means this button over here should have a gradient background color, and to do that we will wrap this inside linear gradient like that. Alright, we need to supply some of the prop. So start equals to x will be 0 and y will be 0 as well, and equals to x will be 1 and y will be 0. For the colors, it's going to be colors, and we will include the style like this. So button container style. Alright, save it. Alright, cool. So we have the background color in place. All we need to do now is to supply the button container style prop over here. Alright, so button container style, and the padding vertical is going to be 18, and border radius should be 20. Save it. Sweet. Now that I'm here, I'm gonna supply the button container style prop for the sign up button as well. So button container style, margin top should be equals to sizes.radius, padding vertical should be equals to 18, border radius should be 20, border color should be equals to colors.dark lime, and border width should be equals to 1. Save it. Nothing changes because we need to include the style over here. Alright, so style, we will include the button container style. Save it. Perfect. So all we need to do now is to change the color to white. And I think I need to reduce the font size a little bit. Maybe H3, I would say. Same goes for this as well. Alright, a lot better now. So that's all for the login screen. Next, we'll move on to the home screen. So for the home screen, the first thing that we'll be focusing on is the bottom tab navigator over here. So go back to the source code in the navigation folder, open up the tabs.js file. And over here, we need to import a couple of things from constants. So import constants. Here we need colors and icons. Alright, next we are going to customize the appearance of the bottom tab navigator, and to do that we can make use of the tab bar options prop like that. We do not want the label, so show label equals to false, and we will give it a bit of styling as well like that. Position should be absolute, bottom equals to 0, left equals to 0, right equals to 0, elevation equals to 0 as well, background color equals to white, border top color equals to transparent, and lastly height should be equals to 100. Save it. Alright, as you can see here, the tab label is no longer visible, and also we have customized the appearance a little bit, right? Okay, next we'll be working on each of these tab icons over here. Okay, in order to be able to customize each of the tabs, we are going to make use of the options props like this. And within the options prop, we need to supply the tab bar icon property like this. We need the focus props over here so that we know which tab is currently being focused. Alright, and then followed by the arrow function, and over here we are going to return a standalone component called tab icon. Don't worry, we will work on this later. So for the tab icon component, it will take in two props, which are the focus prop like that, and also the icon prop. For the home tab, it will be icons.home. Now all I need to do is to copy and paste it for the other tabs as well. For the search tab, the icon will be icons.search. For the bookmark tab, the icons will be icons.bookmark. And lastly, for the settings tab, the icon will be icons.settings. Next, we are going to create the tab icon component in the components folder. So create a new file, name it tabicon.js. Same thing, we need to import from React. We need to import a couple of things from React Native. Here we need view, and also we need image. And lastly, we need to import from constants as well. Here we need colors. After that, we can create the functional component. So constant tab icon, it will take in two props, which are focus and also icon, arrow function, and here we are going to return a container view, give it some styling, align items equals to center, justify content equals to center as well, height equals to 80, and width equals to 50. Within the container view, we are going to render the icon. So we need image component like this. So source will be icon, resize mode equals to contain, style equals to width will be 30, height will be 30 as well, tint color, if it is currently being focused, then the tint color will be colors.dark-green. If it's not, then it will be colors.light line. Alright, now we have the icon in place, but don't forget we need to render the line underneath as well. Alright, so to do that, over here, if it is currently being focused, then we will return a view, give it some styling. Position will be absolute, left will be 0, right will be 0, bottom will be 0, height will be 5, border top left radius equals to 5, border top right radius equals to 5 as well, and lastly the background color will be colors.dark-green. Alright, now don't forget we need to export default tab icon over here. Save it. Next, head over to the index.js file, and over here we need to import from tab icon as well, like this, and we will export it over here. Save it. And lastly, in the tabs.js file, we can then import the component over here. Alright, I'm gonna import from components, and I'm going to import the tab icon component over here. See it? Perfect. The tab icons are now in place. Great. Alright, next we'll be working on the home screen. Okay, so head back to the source code. In the screens folder, open up the home.js file, and over here we need to import a couple of things from React Native. So we need view, we need text, we need image, we need safe area view, we need touchable opacity, we need text input, and lastly we need flat list. After that, we need to import a couple of things from constants. Alright, we need fonts, we need colors, we need sizes, we need icons, we need images, and lastly we need dummy data. Alright, so for this home screen, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to wrap this whole thing within a safe area view, and then after that we are going to use flat list and build the whole screen by using the bottom up approach. What that means is that we are going to use the flat list render item prop to render the categories section over here, and then after that we are going to use the list header component prop to work on all the other sections over here. Alright, so go back to the source code, and I'm going to replace this whole thing with safe area view. Give it some styling. Flex equals to 1 and background color equals to white. Alright, now within the safe area view, we are going to render a flat list like that. The data is going to be dummy data dot categories. The key extractor is going to be item arrow function item.id. Keyboard dismiss mode equals to on drag. Shows vertical scroll indicator equals to false. We will work on the list header component later, but I'm gonna just return a normal view for now, like that. After that, we have the render item prop. So render item, over here we have the item, then followed by arrow function, and over here, just to test if it works, I'm gonna just return a view with a text component that renders item.name. Alright, and lastly we need the list footer component. List footer component. This is so that the bottom part of the flat list will not be blocked by the bottom tab navigator later on. Okay, so this is going to be a normal view with a bit of styling, where the margin bottom equals to 100. That's all. Save it. Alright, so we have successfully rendered the categories over here in the flat list. Next, we are going to work on each of these items so that it looks something like this. So to do that, I'm going to create a new component over here called category card. Same thing, we are going to import from React. We are going to import from React Native. We need view, touchable opacity, text, and image. Next, we need to import a couple of things from constants. We need colors, fonts, and also sizes. Alright. After that, we can then set up the functional component. So constant category card equals to, and for this component, we are going to tag in 3 props, which are container style, category item, and onPress. Alright, followed by arrow function, and here we are going to return something. Don't forget, we need to export default category card. Just to make sure it works, I'm gonna just simply return a touchable opacity with a text component that renders category item dot name. Save it. Don't forget, we need to include it in the index.js file. So I'm gonna just copy this and change it to category card, and we need to export it over here. Save it. Alright, now head back to the hom.js file, and over here we are going to import from the components, and we need the category card like this. Once we got that, we can then render the category card over here. Alright, so I'm gonna render category card, and for the category item prop, I'm gonna pass the item over. Save it. Great, it's working. Now all we need to do is to make sure our category card looks something like this, where we have the image and followed by 2 text components over here. Okay. Alright, now for the touchable opacity, we are going to give it a bit of styling. Flex direction should be equals to row. Align item should be equals to center. Padding equals to 10. Margin top equals to 10 as well. Border radius equals to sizes.radius. Background color equals to colors.grade2. And lastly, we will include the container style like this. Alright, the onPress equals to onPress. And within the touchable opacity, we have the image, and followed by the details, right? So here we have the image and followed by the details. Okay, so for the image, we are going to render an image component like that, where the source equals to category item dot image, resize mode equals to cover, and the style will be width is going to be 100, height is going to be 100 as well, and border radius equals to sizes.radius. Save it. Alright, so we have the images in place. Next, we'll be working on the details section over here. So for this, we need a container view like this. Give it a bit of styling. Width is going to be 65%. Padding horizontal equals to 20. And within the container view, we are going to render the name and followed by the servings, right? So here we have the name and followed by servings. So for this, we are going to render a text component like that, and we are going to render category item dot name. Give it a bit of styling. Flex equals to 1, and the font is going to be H2. Save it. Alright, we are almost there. For the serving section, we are going to need a text component as well, and for this, we are going to render category item dot duration followed by a separator like that, and category item dot serving and followed by the word serving. Give it a bit of styling. Color equals to colors.gray, and the font equals to body 4. Save it. Alright, the category card is in place. All we need to do now is to supply a bit of the container style and also the onPress function. Okay, so go back to the hom.js file, and for the container style, we are going to give it a bit of margin horizontal, and it's going to be sizes.padding. And whenever we click on the category card, so on press, we are going to navigate to the recipe screen, and at the same time we will pass the recipe over like this. Alright, save it. Perfect. Now if I were to click on this, we should be able to navigate to the recipe screen. Great. Alright, next we can then work on the other sections over here. So we have the header section, we have the search bar section, we have the see recipe card section, we have the trending recipe section, and lastly we have the category header section over here. Okay, so go back to the source code. Within the list header component, we have the header section like that, we have the search bar section, we have see recipe card section, we have trending section, and lastly we have the category header section. Alright, so for the header section, we are going to render a new function called render header, and we are going to create this function over here. So function render header, and we will return something. So for the header section, we have the text component on one side and the profile image on the other side. Okay, so over here I'm going to return a container view, give it a bit of styling, flex direction equals to row, margin horizontal equals to sizes.padding, align item equals to center, and height will be 80. Now within this container view, we have the text section on one side and the image profile image section on the other side, right? So for the text section, we are going to need a container view, give it a bit of styling, flex equals to 1, and within this container view we are going to have two text components. The first one is the greetings and the second one is the question, right? So we have two text components. The first one is going to be hello by programmers, and the question is what you want to cook today. Alright, now we need to give it a bit of styling. Color equals to colors.dark green, and fonts equals to H2. This one as well. Style, margin top equals to 3, color equals to colors.gray, and fonts equals to body 3. Save it. Alright, so we have the text section in place. Next we'll be working on the profile image section over here. Okay, so for this I'm going to wrap it within a touchable opacity, and whenever I click on it, I am going to console log profile like that. Okay, now within this touchable opacity, we are going to render an image component where their source is going to be images.profile, and the style will be width 40, height 40 as well, border radius equals to 20. Save it. Perfect. Alright, next we'll be working on the search bar over here. Okay, so to do that, we are going to render a new function over here. So we are going to render search bar, and we will create this function over here. So function render search bar, and we will return a container view, give it a bit of styling, flex direction equals to row, height equals to 50, align item equals to center, margin horizontal equals to sizes.padding, padding horizontal equals to sizes.radius, border radius equals to 10, background color equals to colors.lightgray. Save it. Alright, so we have the container in place. Next, we need to render the search icon and followed by the text input over here. Okay. So here we need to render an image component. The source is going to be icons.search, and the style is going to be width 20, height 20, and tint color equals to colors.grade. After this, we need to render the text input component. So for this, the style is going to be margin left will be sizes.radius, and the font is going to be body tree. Alright, placeholder text color equals to colors.gray. Placeholder will be search recipes. Alright, save it. Perfect. Okay, next we are going to work on the see recipes section over here. Okay, same thing, we are going to render a new function called render see recipe card, and we are going to create this function over here. So function see recipe card, and we are going to return a container view, give it a bit of styling, flex direction equals to row, margin top equals to sizes.padding, margin horizontal equals to sizes.padding as well, border radius equals to 10, and background color equals to colors.light green. Save it. Alright, now within this container view, we are going to render image and followed by the text components over here. Okay, so we have image and followed by the text components. So for this, we are going to render a container view as well. Give it a bit of styling. Width will be 100. Align items equals to center. Justify content equals to center as well. Now within this container view, we are going to render image component where their source is going to be images.recipe, and the style is width 80 and height 80 as well, like that. Save it. Okay, so the image is in place. Next we'll work on the text components over here. Okay, so for this we need a container view as well. Give it some styling. Flex equals to 1, and padding vertical equals to sizes.radius. Alright, first thing we need here is a text component. I'm gonna hard code it to you have 12 recipes that you haven't tried yet, like that. Give it a bit of styling. Width will be 70%, and the font is going to be body 4. Alright, save it. Alright, so all we need to do now for this section is to render the see recipes button over here. Okay, so after this text component, we are going to render a touchable opacity. Give it some styling, where margin top equals to 10, and whenever I click on this button, I would like to console log see recipes, like that. Alright, now within this touchable opacity, we are going to render the text component that says see recipes. Give it a bit of styling. Color is going to be colors.dark-green, and the text decoration line is going to be underline, and the font will be H4. Right, save it. Perfect. Alright, next we are going to move on to the last major section of the home screen, which is the trending recipes section over here. Same thing, we are going to render a new function which is called render trending section. and we will create this function over here. So function render trending section, and we will return a container view, give it a bit of styling. Margin top equals to sizes dot padding. The first thing we need here is the section title. Okay, so we need a text component that renders trending recipe. We need some styling as well. Margin horizontal equals to sizes dot padding, and the font will be H2. Save it. Alright, so after the section title, we are going to render a flat list, alright, like that, where the data is going to be dummy data dot trending recipes. It's going to be horizontal, and the shows horizontal scroll indicator should be false. Key extractor will be item dot ID, like that. And lastly, we need the render item prop. So for this, we need item index arrow function, and for now I'm just gonna return a normal view like that, and here it's going to be a text component that renders item dot name. Alright, save it. Alright, cool, so we have the flat list in place. All we need to do now is to make sure each of this item looks something like this. Okay, so in order to achieve that, I'm gonna create a new component over here called trendingcart.js. Same thing, we need to import from React. We need to import from React Native, and we need view, we need touchable opacity, we need image, we need text, we need platform, and also we need style sheet, like that. After this, we need to import from constants as well. We need sizes, colors, fonts, and icons. Alright, and now we can create the functional component. So constant trending cart, and for this component we are going to tag in 3 props, which are container style, recipe item, and onPress arrow function. And here we are going to return something. Don't forget, we need to export default trending cart, like that. And for now, I'm gonna just return a touchable opacity with a text component that renders recipe item dot name, just to see if it works. Alright, save it. Make sure we need to include it in the index.js file as well. So I'm gonna just copy and paste it like this and change it to trending cart, and we need to export it over here. Save it. Now go back to the hom.js file. At the top, we need to import the trending cart over here, and we can then use it over here in the render trending section over here. Alright, so I'm gonna render trending cart, and for the recipe item prop, I'm gonna pass in item. Alright, save it. Cool, it works. Alright, next we are going to work on the trending cart component. So for the touchable opacity, give it some styling. Height will be 350. Width will be 250. Margin top is going to be sizes.radius. Margin right is going to be 20. Border radius is going to be sizes.radius. And we will include the container style like this. Okay. The onPress will be onPress. Now within the touchable opacity, the first thing we need here is the background image. Okay, so over here we are going to render a background image, which means we need an image component like that, where the source is going to be recipe item.image, resize mode is going to be cover, and style is going to be width 250, height 350, and border radius equals to sizes.radius. Alright, save it. Alright, so we have the background images in place. Okay. Next, we need to render the category over here. So go back to the source code. Right underneath the background image, we need to render the category. So for this, we need a view. Give it a bit of styling, where the position equals to absolute. Top will be 20, left will be 15. Padding horizontal is going to be sizes.radius. Padding vertical is going to be 5. Background color is going to be colors.transparent gray. And border radius is going to be sizes.radius. Alright, now within this container view, we are going to render the text component. And here it's going to be recipe item.category. Give it a bit of styling. Color equals to white. And fonts equals to H4. Alright, save it. Perfect, we have the category in place as well. Alright, now for the last part of the trending recipes section, we are going to work on the recipe card info over here. Now this is a little bit tricky. If you pay close attention to the background, it is actually a blur view. So in order to achieve this effect, we are going to use an awesome library called React Native Blur. So scroll down and copy this. You can use yarn if you want to, but I'm using npm install. Go back to your source code, open up the terminal, paste it and hit enter, like that. Alright, same thing, we need to run npx react native link, and we need to cd into iOS and run pod install. Alright, so now I'm gonna close the app, and we will cd back to the root folder and run npx react native run iOS. Alright, so navigate to the home screen. So in order to work on the recipe card info section over here, I am going to render a standalone component for this. So here we have the card info section, and I'm going to render recipe card info, and I will pass the recipe item over like this. Okay, and now we are going to create the recipe card info component over here. So constant recipe card info, and this component is going to tag in recipe item, arrow function, and we will return something. Now over here we are going to import from React Native community/blur. So we need the blur view like this. Alright, now for the recipe card info component, we are going to return a blur view like this. The blur type is going to be dark, and the style, I'm gonna use style sheet for this, so styles dot recipe card container, and I'm going to create this style over here. Alright, so constant styles equals to style sheet dot create recipe card container. Position is going to be absolute, bottom will be 10, left will be 10, right will be 10, height will be 100, padding vertical is going to be sizes.radius, padding horizontal is going to be sizes.base, border radius is going to be sizes.radius. Alright, save it. Okay, as you can see here, the blur view is in place. Great. Now go back to the recipe card info component. Now if you're running on Android, you will most probably hit some issue with the blur view. The reason being is because we are rendering multiple blur view within this particular flat list, right? It works totally fine on iOS, but it doesn't really work so well in Android. So for that reason, we need to do a bit of handling over here. So if the platform.os is iOS, then I'm going to return the blur view version like that. If it's not, then I will return a normal view version like this. Okay, So for this view, give it some styling. We are going to include the styles like this. So styles.recipe card container, and we will include the background color, which is going to be colors.transparent.gray. Gray, like that. Okay. Alright, and now within the view container, we are going to render another standalone component called recipe card details. Alright, and we will pass the recipe item over as well, like that. Same thing, I'm going to just copy and paste it over here as well for the Android version. And now we will create the recipe card details functional component over here. So constant recipe card details equals to, we will tag in one prop, which is the recipe item, arrow function, and here we will return a container view like this. Alright, give it a bit of styling. Flex equals to 1. Now within this container view, first thing we need to render here is the name or the title, and followed by the bookmark icon. Then after that, we will render the duration and serving section. Okay, so over here we have the name and bookmark section, followed by the duration and serving section. Okay, so for this we need a container view. Give it a bit of styling. Flex equals to 1, flex direction equals to row, justify content equals to space between. Alright, so within this container view, we are going to render a text component, and here it's going to be recipe item.name. Give it a bit of styling. Width is going to be 70%. Color is going to be white. Font is going to be H3, and I would like to override the font size to 18. Alright, save it. Okay, so we have the name in place. Next, we need to render the bookmark icon. So over here, we need to render an image component where the source, if the recipe item dot is bookmark is true, then we are going to render the icons.bookmark field icon. If it's not, then it's going to be icons.bookmark, like that. Alright, give it some styling. Width equals to 20, height will be 20 as well. Margin right is going to be sizes.base, and tint color is going to be colors.dark green. Alright, save it. Okay, so as you can see here, the bookmark icon is in place as well. Next, we'll move on to the duration and serving section. Okay, so over here, we need to render a text component. Alright, and here it's going to be recipe item dot duration followed by a separator, and recipe item dot serving, and followed by the word serving. Okay, give it some styling. Color is going to be colors.light gray, and the font is going to be fonts.body4. Alright, save it. Perfect. Okay, all we need to do now is to supply the container style prop and also the onPress prop. Okay, so go back to the hom.js file, and over here we need the container style, margin left. If the index equals to 0, which means it's the first item over here, then the margin left is going to be sizes.padding. If it's not, then it's going to be 0. And whenever I click on the trending card component, alright, so onPress, we are going to navigate to the recipe screen as well. And of course, at the same time, we will pass the recipe over like that. Okay, save it. Okay, so we have the trending recipe section in place. Now, if I were to click on any of this item, we should be able to navigate to the recipe screen like this. Great. Okay, so the last section that we are going to work on is the category header section over here. Okay, same thing, we are going to render a new function called render category header, and we will create this function over here. So function render category header, and we will return a container view give it a bit of styling. Flex direction equals to row. Align item equals to center. Margin top equals to 20. And margin horizontal equals to sizes.padding. And now within this container view, we have the section title and followed by the view all button. Okay, so here we have the section title and followed by the view all button. Okay, so for the section title, we need the text component and we are going to render categories. Give it some styling. Flex equals to 1 and the font equals to H2. And next for the view all section, we are going to need a touchable opacity. And within the touchable opacity, we need the text component that renders view all. Alright, give it some styling. Color is going to be colors.gray and the font is going to be body 4. Alright, save it. Let's see. Perfect. So we have the category header section in place as well. Great. Alright, so that's all for the home screen. Next we'll move on to the recipe screen. So for the recipe screen, which is the last screen of this project, we are going to make use of the flat list bottom-up approach as well, which means we are going to use the flat list render item prop to render this part over here, okay? And then we will make use of the list header component prop to render all the other sections over here, alright? And also later on, we'll have a look at how we can implement the scrollable header animation over here, alright? So go back to the source code. In the screens folder, open up the recipe.js file. And here we need to import a couple more components from React Native. So we need view, text, image, touchable opacity, animated, and platform. We need the use ref hook as well, like that. We need the blur view, so import React Native community blur. And here we need to import the blur view. After that, we need to import from constants. We need sizes, fonts, colors, and icons. And lastly, we will declare a constant variable over here called header height, which is going to be 350. And the header height variable is actually referring to the height of the header. Okay, all right. Next, for the recipe functional component, we need to have two props, which are navigation and also route. Okay, so the first thing we are going to do here is that we need to make sure we can retrieve the selected recipe, pass over from the home screen to the recipe screen, right? So to do that, we need to first create the state. So constant selected recipe, set selected recipe, react use state, and the initial value is going to be null. And over here, we are going to make use of the use effect hook, like that. So we need to retrieve the recipe, pass over from the home screen, like this, equals to route.params. And once we got the recipe, we are going to set selected recipe, recipe. Alright, save it. Now that we have the recipe in place, next we can start to work on the recipe screen. So I'm gonna remove these two properties and change it to background color equals to colors.white. And then we are going to wrap the whole screen by using animated.flatlist. The reason why we are using animated.flatlist is so that we can animate the header later on, okay? So for the flat list, the data is going to be selected recipe dot ingredients. The key extractor is going to be item arrow function item.id. Shows vertical scroll indicator should be equals to false. And for the list header component, I'm going to just return a normal view for now. The scroll event throttle should be equals to 16, and we need the onScroll prop to be able to perform the animation. So onScroll animated.event native event content offset Y, and we will assign it to the scroll Y like that. Alright, and over here we need to make sure the use native driver should be equals to true. Okay, and we will create the scroll Y animated value over here. So constant scroll Y equals to use ref new animated dot value. Initial value is going to be 0 dot current. Okay. Alright, next we can then work on the render item prop. So render item, here we have item, arrow function, and just to see if it works, I'm going to return a normal view, and within this view we have a text component that renders item dot description. Alright, save it. Perfect, so we have the flat list in place. All we need to do now is to make sure each of this item looks something like this. Okay, so what we have here is basically the icon section, followed by the description section, and lastly is the quantity section. Okay, so now I'm gonna give the container view a bit of styling. Flex direction equals to row, padding horizontal equals to 30, and margin vertical equals to 5. And within the container view, we have the icon section, we have the description section, and lastly we have the quantity section. Alright, so for the icon section, we need a container view, give it a bit of styling, align item equals to center, justify content equals to center as well, height equals to 50, width equals to 50, border radius equals to 5, and background color equals to colors.light gray. Alright, now within this container view, we are going to render the image component where the source is going to be item.icon, and the style will be height 40 and width 40 as well. Alright, save it. Okay, so we have the icons in place. Next we'll move on to the description section over here. Okay, so for the description, we need a container view as well. Give it some styling. Flex equals to 1, padding horizontal equals to 20, justify content equals to center. And over here, we need a text component that renders item.description. Give it some styling as well. The font should be equals to body tree. Save it. Alright, and lastly, we'll move on to the quantity section over here. Okay. So for this, we need a container view as well. Give it some styling. Align item equals to flex n, and justify content equals to center. And over here we need the text component. That renders item.quantity. Give it some styling, where the font equals to body tree as well. Alright, save it. Sweet. Alright, so we have completed the ingredient list section. Next, we are going to make use of the list header component prop to work on the header section, the info section, and lastly is the ingredient header section over here. Alright, so go back to your source code. In the list header component over here, we have the header section, we have the info section, and lastly is the ingredient title section, right? So for the header section, we are going to render a new function called render recipe cart header, and we will create this function over here. So function render recipe cart header, and we will return a container view like this. Give it some styling. Line item equals to center. Alright, now within this container view, we will need to render two different things, which are the image background and followed by the recipe creator card. The reason why we didn't include the back button as well as the bookmark button in this section is because I do not want these two buttons to be scrollable. So don't worry, we'll work on these two buttons later on, okay? So now go back to your source code, and over here we have the background image, and followed by the recipe creator card section, right? So for the image, we are going to render animated.image, alright? And the source is going to be selected recipe.image. Resize mode equals to contain, and the style will be height, header height, width will be 200%. And now try to save it and see what we got. Okay, so we have the background image in place. All we need to do now is to make sure we can animate it. So to do that, we will make use of the transform property. Okay, and here I would like to set the translate y like that, and we will use the interpolate method. So scroll y dot interpolate, and here the input range will be negative header height 0 and header height. The output range will be negative header height divided by 2, 0, and header height multiplied by 0.75. Alright, save it. So what we are doing here is that whenever we scroll up, you will notice that the background image is slowly moving upwards as well. And whenever we scroll down, the background image is slowly moving downwards. Okay. Next, I would like to scale the image. So over here, scale will be same thing, scroll y dot interpolate, and the input range equals to negative header height 0 and header height, and for the output range it will be 2, 1 and 0.5. Save it. Alright, so what we are doing here is that whenever we scroll the flat list, the header image, the header background image will scale accordingly, like this. Okay? Alright. Now all we need to do is to set the overflow over here to hidden. Like that. Save it. Now let's try to scroll it. Okay. It's almost perfect, I would say. At least whenever we scroll up, the background image will scale accordingly, like this. Just that we need to do some handling when we scroll downwards, as we do not want the blank space on the top, right? So to do that, there is a bit of workaround. We would like to set the margin top to negative 1000, and we'll set the padding top to 1000. Alright, now save it. If we were to scroll the list now, the animation should work perfectly fine. Okay, perfect. Next, we'll be working on the recipe creator card. Alright, so over here, we are going to render an animated view as well, like that. Give it a bit of styling. So position should be equals to absolute. Bottom equals to 10. Left equals to 30. Right equals to 30. Height equals to 80. Alright, save it. Let's work on the content of this animated view first, which is this part over here. And we'll see how we can animate this later on, okay? So for this, I am going to create a standalone component called recipe creator card info. And I'm going to pass the selected recipe over like this. Select the recipe, yep. And now we are going to create this component over here. So constant recipe creator card info, and here we'll be taking in the selected recipe, arrow function, and we will return something. Now if you take a look at the background of the card info, it is actually a blur view as well. And since we would like to standardize the UI appearance with the previous screen, which is the home screen, so here we are going to check if the platform.os is equals to iOS, then we are going to return the one with blur view. If it's not, then we'll simply return the one with normal view, right? So for this, it's going to be blur view like that. Give it some styling. Flex equals to 1, and border radius equals to sizes.radius, and the blur type equals to dark. For Android, we are going to return a normal view. Give it some styling as well. Flex equals to 1. Border radius. Border radius equals to sizes.radius. And the background color is going to be colors.transparent black 9. That one. Okay, save it. Alright, so we have the container in place. Next, we'll be working on the cart info itself. Okay, and to do that, we are going to create another standalone component called recipe creator cart detail. And same thing, we are going to pass the selected recipe over like this. Same goes for Android as well. Okay, and now we are going to create this component over here. So constant recipe creator cart detail, we will tag in one prop, which is the selected recipe, arrow function, and we will return something. So for the cart info, we have basically 3 different sections over here. We have the profile picture followed by the label, and lastly is the button. Okay, so over here we are going to return a container view. Give it some styling. Flex equals to 1, flex direction equals to row, and align item equals to center. Now within this container view, we are going to render the profile photo, the labels, and also the button. Okay, so for the profile photo, we need a container view like this. Give it some styling. Width equals to 40, height equals to 40 as well, and margin left equals to 20. And over here, we need to render the image component, and the source will be selected recipe dot author dot profile pic, and the style will be width 40, height 40 as well, and border radius 20. Alright, save it. Okay, so we have the profile photo in place. Next, we'll move on to the labels. So for this, we need another container view. Give it some styling. Flex equals to 1 and margin horizontal equals to 20. And for this, we need to render 2 text components. So we need 2 text components over here, like that. The first text component is going to render recipe by. Give it some styling. Color equals to colors.light gray 2, and the font will be body 4. After that, we need to render the name, so selected recipe dot author dot name. Give it some styling as well. So color should be white 2, like that, and font should be H3. Alright, save it. Okay, so we have the label section in place. Lastly, we'll go for the button. Okay, so over here, we will be rendering a touchable opacity. Give it some styling. Width equals to 30, height equals to 30 as well. Align item equals to center. Justify content equals to center. Margin right equals to 20. Border radius equals to 5. And border width equals to 1. And lastly, the border color equals to colors.light green 1. Okay, save it. As you can see here, we have the frame in place. All we need to do now is to render the arrow icon. Okay, so over here, we are going to render an image component. The source is going to be icons.right arrow, and the style will be width 15, height 15, and tint color colors.light green 1, like that. Alright, save it. Okay, so whenever I click on this button on press, I would like to console log view profile. Alright, it's working. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is that I would like to hide this created card with animation whenever we scroll up to a certain point. Right? Whenever we scroll up to a certain point, I would like to be able to hide the created info by using animation. Let's see how we can do that. So navigate to the recipe cart header function. Let me see. Yep, over here, we would like to be able to animate this view, and to do that, we can make use of the transform property, like that. Translate X, same thing, will be scroll Y, and we will use the interpolate method, like that. The input range will be 0, 170, and 250, whereas the output range will be 0, 0, and 100. The extrapolate will be claim. Alright, now save it. Now whenever we scroll up to a certain point, the creator card will be hidden with animation, like this, right? Perfect. So whenever we scroll up, the creator info will be hidden. Great. Alright, next we'll be working on the header bar over here. So the header bar basically consists of the back button as well as the bookmark button. But to make it a little bit more interesting, I am going to include some animation components as well over here. Okay, let's see how we can do that. So first thing first, we need to render the header bar function over here. So after the flatless component, okay, we are going to render header bar. So this one's actually header bar, like that. And we will create the function over here. So function render header bar, and we will return a container view, give it some styling. Position should be equals to absolute. Top will be 0, left will be 0, right will be 0, height will be 90, flex direction equals to row, align items equals to, flex n, justify content equals to space between, padding horizontal equals to sizes.padding, and padding bottom equals to 10. So within this container view, we have the back button and followed by the bookmark button, right? So for the back button, we need a touchable opacity, give it some styling, align item equals to center, justify content equals to center as well, height will be 35, width will be 35, border radius will be 18, border width will be 1, border color is going to be colors.lightgray, and the background color is going to be colors.transparent black 5. Alright, so whenever I click on the back button, I would like to go back to the previous screen. And within the touchable opacity, we need to render an image component where the source is going to be icons.back, and the style will be width 15, height 15, and tint color is going to be colors.lightgray. Alright, save it. Perfect, we have the back button in place, and whenever I click on it, it will navigate back to the previous screen. Okay, next we'll be working on the bookmark button. Same thing, we need a touchable opacity as well. Give it some styling. Align item equals to center. Justify content equals to center as well. Height will be 35. Width will be 35. And within the touchable opacity, we are going to render the image component. So for this, the source will be, if the selected recipe is bookmark equals to true, then we'll be using icons.bookmark field. If it's not, then we'll be using icons.bookmark. Alright, give it some styling as well. Width equals to 30, height equals to 30, and tint color equals to colors.dark green. Alright, save it. Perfect. And you will notice that the header bar will not be impacted by the flat list, which is exactly what we want, right? Next, what I'm going to do is that I would like to add a screen overlay for the header bar section over here, so that whenever we scroll up after the creator info card is hidden, I would like the screen overlay to slowly turn the background into black color. Alright, let's see how we can do that. So over here, right above the back button, I would like to render a screen overlay. Okay. And for this, we need to use the animated.view. Give it some styling. Position should be equals to absolute. Top will be 0, left will be 0, right will be 0, and bottom will be 0 as well. The background color is going to be colors.black. And over here, we are going to animate the opacity property. Same thing, we are going to use the scroll Y and the interpolate method. Alright, so the input range is going to be header height minus 100 and header height minus 70. For the output range is going to be 0 and 1. Alright, save it. Now whenever we scroll up, you will notice that the screen overlay with the background color of black will slowly become visible, like this, right? Like this. Okay, so the screen overlay is in place. Next, I would like to include a header bar title as well that will only be visible after you scroll up to a certain point. Okay, so to do that, I'm gonna render the header bar title over here, like that. And for this, it's going to be animated.view as well, because we need to animate it. Give it some styling. So position equals to absolute. Top equals to 0, left equals to 0, right equals to 0, bottom equals to 0 as well. Align item equals to center. Justify content equals to flex end. Padding bottom equals to 10. I think let us keep it this way first, and we will work on the animation shortly. So within this animated.view, we are going to render two text components. The first one is going to render recipe by, like that, and the second one is going to render selected recipe dot author dot name. Give it some styling. So color equals to colors.light gray 2, and the font will be body 4. This one as well, give it a bit of styling. So the color is going to be colors.white 2, and the fonts will be H3. Alright, save it. Alright, so as you can see, the header bar title is over here. Like I said, we only want it to be visible after we scroll up to a certain point, right? So to do that, we are going to animate the opacity property. Same thing, we are going to use the interpolate method. So scroll by.interpolate, and the input range is going to be header height minus 100 and header height minus 50, and the output range will be 0 and 1. Alright, save it. As you can see here, the initial opacity is 0, which means it's not visible. However, whenever we scroll up to a certain point, the opacity will become 1 and it is visible, as you can see here. Right? And to make it even fancier, I would like the header bar title to slide up from the bottom. So to do that, we are going to animate the transform property, like that. And over here is going to be translate Y. Same thing, scroll Y.interpolate. And the input range is going to be header height minus 100 and header height minus 50, whereas the output range will be 50 and 0. Extrapolate is going to be clean. Alright, save it. Now if we were to scroll up the list, the header bar title should animate accordingly as well. Like that, see? Like that. Alright? It will be more obvious if the list is longer, but it's actually working. Perfect. Alright, so that's all for the header section. Next, we'll move on to the recipe info section over here. Okay? So go back to your source code, and over here in the flat list header component, over here we are going to render a new function called render recipe info. And we are going to create this function over here. So function render recipe info, and we are going to return a container view. Give it some styling. Flex direction equals to row. Height equals to 130. Width equals to sizes.width. Padding horizontal equals to 30. Padding vertical equals to 20. And lastly, the align item should be equals to center. Alright. Now within this container view, we basically have two different sections, which are the recipe name section and followed by the viewers section. Okay. So over here we have the recipe section and followed by the viewers section. So for the recipe name, we are going to render a container view, give it some styling. Flex equals to 1.5 and justify content equals to center. Now within this view, we need a text component that renders selected recipe dot name. Alright, give it some styling. The font should be equals to H2. Next, we need to render another text component for the duration and serving. Right? So over here, we will render the selected recipe dot duration followed by the separator and selected recipe dot serving followed by the word serving. Okay, give it some styling. Margin top equals to 5. Color equals to colors.light gray 2. And the font will be body 4. Alright, save it. Okay, so the recipe section is in place. Next, we'll move on to the viewers section. So to do this, we need a container view as well. Give it some styling. Flex equals to 1 and justify content equals to center. Okay, so for the viewers section over here, we are going to create a standalone component called viewers. Okay, so over here, we are going to render a standalone component called viewers, and we will pass the viewers list over. So viewers list equals to selected recipe dot viewers. Okay, so all we need to do now is to create a new file in the components folder called viewers.js. Alright, so same thing, we need to import from React, we need to import from React Native, we need view, we need image, and also we need text. Next, we need to import from constants, like that, and here we need the fonts and also colors. Alright, now over here, we will create the functional component, so constant viewers, arrow function, and for this component, it will take in one prop, which is the viewers list. Alright, so arrow function, and just to see if it works, I'm gonna just return a normal view, like that, with a text component that renders viewers. Okay, so don't forget we need to export default viewers as well. Save it. And now in the index.js file, we need to import the viewers like this. So viewers, and also we need to export it over here. Alright, save it. Now go to the recipe screen over here, and on top we need to import the viewers component. So over here we need to import components. We need to import viewers like that. Okay. Alright, save it and see if it works. Now navigate to the recipe screen. Great, so the viewers component is indeed working. Now go back to the viewers.js file, and over here there are basically a few different handlings depending on the number of viewers. So if the viewers list.length is equals to 0, which means nobody have seen the recipe before, we are going to return something. Else if the viewers list.length is less than or equals to 4, then we are going to return something else. Else, if it's more than 4, then we will have a different layout as well. Okay? Alright, so if the viewer list is equals to 0, then we are going to return a container view like this. Give it some styling. Align items equals to center. Justify content equals to center as well. And within the container view, we are going to render a text view. And for this, we are going to render be the first one to try this. Give it some styling. Color equals to colors dot light gray 2. And the font will be body 4. Now if the viewers list is less than or equals to 4, then we are going to render a container view as well. And now within this container view, we are going to render the profile image section over here and followed by the text section over here. Okay. Oops. Alright. So within the container view, we have the profile section and followed by the text section. So for the profile section, we need another container view. Give it some styling. Flex direction equals to row. Align items equals to center. Justify content equals to flex n. And margin bottom equals to 10. And now over here, we are going to use the map method to render the profile images. Alright, so viewers list dot map item index arrow function, and here we are going to return a view where the key will be index and the style will be height 50, width 50, and for the margin left, if the index is equals to 0, then the margin left will be 0. If it's not, then it will be negative 20. Alright, now within this view, we are going to render the image component, where the source will be item.profilePic, and the style will be width 50, height 50, and border radius 25. Alright, so that's all for the profile images section. Next, we'll move on to the text section. So for this, we need two text components, like that. The first text component is going to render the number of people. So viewers list dot length people. Give it some styling. Color equals to colors dot light gray 2. Text align equals to right. Fonts equals to body 4. And we would like to override the line height to 18. And for the second text component, we are going to render already try this, like that. Give it some styling. Color equals to colors dot light gray 2, same thing. Text align equals to right. Fonts equals to body 4, and we would like to override the line height to 18. Now if the viewers list is more than 4, then we are going to return a container view as well. Just that this time the UI will look something like this, where we have 3 profile images and followed by the remaining number of people. Okay, so same thing, we have the profile section and followed by the text section over here. So for the profile section, we need a view like this. Give it some styling. Flex direction equals to row. Align item equals to center. Justify content equals to flex n. And margin bottom equals to 10. Now within the profile container view, we are going to render the profile images by using the map method as well. So viewers list dot map item index arrow function, and here we are going to return something, right? So if the index is less than or equals to 2, like that, we are going to return the profile images. Alright, if the index is equals to 3, then we are going to return the remaining number of people, right? Okay, so if the index is less than or equals to 2, then we need a container view. Oops, I should use the curly braces over here and here as well. Alright, now give it some styling. Height will be 50, width will be 50, and for the margin left, If the index is equals to 0, then the margin left will be 0. If it's not, then it will be negative 20. We need to supply the key as well, so the key will be equals to index. And now within this view, we will render the image component where the source is going to be item.profilePic and the style is going to be width 50, height 50, and border radius 25. Now if the index is equals to 3, then we will return a container view as well. We need to supply the key prop, which is equals to index, and we need to give it some styling. Height equals to 50, width equals to 50, align item equals to center, justify content equals to center as well, margin left equals to negative 20, border radius equals to 25, background color equals to colors.dark green. Alright, now within this view, we are going to render the text component. Right, so we have a text component over here, and we will render viewers list dot length minus 3 and followed by the plus sign like this. Alright, give it some styling. Color equals to white, and the font equals to body 4. Alright, so that's all for the profile image section. And for the text section, it is actually the same as the one over here. So I'm gonna just copy like this and paste it over here. Alright, now save it. Okay, so there you go. For this recipe, we have 4 viewers, which is why we have 4 profile photos stacking on each other like this. Okay, so let me try to open up the other recipe. Let's try this one. Okay, so for this recipe, there are 5 viewers, which is why we have 3 profile photos stacking on each other and followed by the remaining number of people, right? Let me try the other one. Okay, so this one has 3 people, which is correct. And for the nasi lemak, yep, we have 0 viewers, and this is what it will be rendered on the screen. Perfect. Alright. Let me try the animation as well. Yep, it's working. Now I would like to give some spacing at the bottom part of the flat list. So to do that, head back to the recipe.js file. Look for the flat list over here, and we are going to add another prop called list footer component. And for this, it will just be a normal view like that with a bit of styling, where the margin bottom equals to 100. Alright, save it. Okay, a lot better now. And now let me try the animation. Perfect. Alright. So the last section for the recipe screen is the ingredient header section over here. Alright, so to do that, in the list header component over here, we will render a new function called render ingredient header. And we will create this function over here. So function render ingredient header, and we will return a view. Give it some styling. Flex direction equals to row. Padding horizontal equals to 30. Margin top equals to sizes.radius. Margin bottom equals to sizes.padding. Alright, so within this container view, we need 2 text components. Alright, so for this text component, we are going to render ingredients. Give it some styling. Flex equals to 1, and the font equals to H3. And for the second text component, we are going to render the number of items. Okay, so for this, we are going to render selected recipe dot ingredients dot length and followed by the word items. Give it some styling. Color equals to colors.light gray 2, and font equals to body 4. Alright, save it. Perfect. Alright, it's working. Let me quickly go through the app for a bit. Okay. Alright guys, we have finally completed this beautiful food recipe app based on the design created by Herdetya on Dribbble.com. Now if you would like to support our work, or if you're in a hurry, the full source code for this project is available on shop.byprogrammers.com, and I have included the link in the description below. If not, that's totally fine, as you can still achieve the same result by getting the star template for this project and follow along with the video. So if you like the video, we'll be more than happy if you can give it a thumbs up, comment, share it to your friends, and also don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. I will see you guys in the next video. Happy coding. Peace.